we have injury updates on both Matas Buzelis and Josh Giddey. After scary moments in last night's game, we'll talk a little bit about that. Jaden Ivey also will not be joining the Chicago Bulls on this road trip, which means that 2-week timeline has got updated to 3 weeks. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we're going to break down and ask this question. How much time does Arturas Karnisovas really have to get this shit right? We're going to talk about all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And yesterday was scary. Scary moments yesterday. I was prepared to be really pissed off yesterday in the post-game show. I said as much on the post-game show. After Matas Buzelis went down, when it looked like he was limping before he officially twisted the ankle, which could have led to him twisting the ankle. Maybe he had aggravated a little bit there. Josh Giddey went down as well. Josh Giddey returned back to the game and checked back in. Matas Buzelis returned back to the bench, which is a good sign. We did get updates after the game on both of them. They both officially have sprained ankles. They will be reevaluated before we find out exactly what's going on. They both will be evaluated today. So we should have an announcement today as of exactly what things are going to look like for those two guys, right? Matas Buzelis ended up only playing 20 minutes, didn't play in the entirety of the fourth quarter. But with the Bulls already having players like Jalen Smith, Patrick Williams, Anthony Simons, and Jaden Ivey already out, potentially missing Matas Buzelis and Josh Giddey for any extended amount of time would potentially sucks. Keep in mind, Matas Buzelis is the only Chicago Bull to play in all 61 games this season so far. So, that's what you got to look at when it comes down to that. So with that said, when you look at it, how much time could each one of these guys miss? Well, with Josh Giddey getting back into the game last night, I would say that there's a pretty good chance that he doesn't really miss any time. Now, there could be some swelling that happens overnight, which is why they're going to reevaluate him today. If there's any swelling on that ankle, more than likely he will sit out a game or so, right? That's probably going to happen if there's any swelling on that ankle. With Matas Buzelis not getting back into the game, I speculated. This is speculation. Nothing's been announced as of yet. I speculated that we probably won't see Matas Buzelis at all the rest of this week, right? So I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Matas Buzelis again until next Tuesday when we take on the Golden State Warriors. I wouldn't be surprised if that, for what it's worth, right? Both of these guys talked about it after the game. Josh Giddey said that it doesn't feel too bad, but he'll know more on Wednesday. And Matas Buzelis said this: I don't think it's that bad. I hope to play next game. I hate missing games. And we get that from Matas Buzelis. We know Matas doesn't like missing games. Even if he is restricted, he doesn't like missing games, right? So, both these guys, you want those guys out there on the basketball court. That's what you want to see from these guys, to be able to play. That's what we pay them for. That's what they want to do. And I get it that a lot of fans have the mindset of, let's just shut everybody down for the rest of the way of the season. That would alarm the NBA to actually fine us for tanking. Right now, we're doing a good job at just being a bad basketball team that's losing games and not, getting too much of the attention for tanking. You start sitting guys too long or the rest of the season for sprained ankles, you're gonna get fined. And so, and one could say, well, is the fine worth it if we end up getting a top 4 pick? I get that to a degree, right? I understand that, but I want these guys to play. I want these guys to continue building their chemistry together anyway. That's going to be really important next year, because a lot of this roster is going to be new next season. And so as much as chemistry that you can have, especially if they're adding and coming in with Josh Giddey, Matas Buzelis, Trey Jones, Jalen Smith, Noah Essengay, those are really the only guys that I would say I'm willing to guarantee are on this roster next season. Isaac Okoro's likely to stay, right? That's likely. Rob Dillingham with his contract is likely to stay. But those are only guys that I'd be willing to guarantee. And even then, a team could come calling for Trey Jones. A team could come calling for Jalen Smith on an offer that the Bulls feel like they can't pass up, because teams need quality role players. So, all that's there. But, to get back in it, hopefully Matas and Josh don't miss extended amounts of time. Hopefully both these guys are able to get back out on the basketball court as soon as possible, but their health does need to come first. We're not fighting and competing for anything this season. So health comes first, right? Get fully healthy, have no swelling, those type of things, have no tightness, no soreness, And then after that, get back on the basketball court, build on your chemistry, finish the season as strong as you possibly can. This is an opportunity to build some momentum going into the offseason and stuff. Well, momentum in your style of play, not momentum in wins. That's not really going to be something that happens a lot for the Chicago Bulls this season. So that's really what you're looking at it for, and we'll see what happens. Overall, I know this team's going to be very protective. I speculated again because we know that this Bulls team, the moment somebody's hurt, they use it to hold them out for as long as humanly possible. So, with the tank, you could see them out an extended amount of time. And so the question just becomes about, do they miss any time? If they do, how much time is it that they miss? And then where does that put the Chicago Bulls at the end of all of that? And we'll see. So those are the injury updates. But Billy Donovan provided injury updates on everybody else. I think the namely one that we have to really get into is that Jaden Ivey is not traveling with this team on this 5-game road stretch that they're on right now, which means that it's going to be like they initially announced that he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. That's automatically 3 weeks he's not going to be here, right? So that's 3 weeks, right? They shut him down February 21st. Keep that in mind, right? And so he's going to miss 3 weeks, about 11 games over that time period. And the question then becomes about, and this is a question that a lot of people are asking anyway, is Jaden Ivey done here? And, I'm of two minds with it, right? Like, I can completely understand. And I think that if the Bulls look at this Jaden Ivey situation and the way that it's gone and say, hey, listen, we're not even going to extend the qualifying offer. We're just going to move on. We're going to go to players that are more healthy. I don't think anybody would blame them for that, right? I don't think anybody would blame them for that. But I do realize that this is also a business, and this is also asset management. And Jaden Ivey, with what he's shown, if there's any chance, which if you still go off the medicals, right? Like, mentally is different, but if you still go off the medicals, there's more than enough reason to believe that Jaden Ivey is going to make a full return to that. The injury that he has, people typically make full returns for. It's just trusting that leg again. And I do think that, that mental part that's in the back of his mind there is messing him up a little bit. But if Jaden Ivey if there's any inkling and belief that Jaden Ivey is going to get back to the player that he was, the Bulls may go ahead and extend that qualifying offer. They may even give him a 2 or 3 year deal on a team-friendly budget. There's not going to be a lot of teams calling for Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey's not going to get a bag. Like, had he not went down with injury, he was going to get paid in restricted free agency. Now, that bag is not going to be there for him. So if the Bulls do, I think if the Bulls offer him $9 to $11 million, you probably can retain Jaden Ivey. Now, the question becomes about, what do you do with your money elsewhere? And that's why I think the Jaden Ivey thing is going to be much like kind of Jonathan Kuminga last year. And don't even compare it to Josh Giddey, because we knew the Bulls wanted to keep Josh Giddey. But I think it's going to be like the Kuminga thing last year, where you may not see Jaden Ivey and a full resolution to his situation until everything else is handled in free agency, meaning that the Bulls can give him that qualifying offer, hold that, and if they need the money elsewhere to put on an offer sheet or somewhere else, they can rescind that qualifying offer. Or they can go through their offseason, go through the draft, right? See, do they end up drafting a shooting guard? If they do, makes it even less chance of him, likelihood of him being back, right? Do they do that? Do they then put a big offer sheet out on a center and stuff like that? And then they look at it and say, hey, at all this, we still got about $11 million we're comfortable with. All right, Jaden Ivey, go ahead and come back. Let's see what you can do for a season or two. So there's those options that are there as well. The resolution to Jaden Ivey is not going to come quick. I don't think it's going to be one of those fast resolutions when it's all said and done that, you go into free agency, you get a deal done, like even the Kobe and Io situation, right? In their restricted free agency, we got deals announced for those guys pretty early in the free agency. It was pretty early into the restricted free agency. So I don't know if it's going to happen like that. And the Bulls may very well just wait and see. Does any team come calling and give them an offer sheet? Does any team, are negotiations out there? So, we'll see what happens with Jaden Ivey. But right now, as much as there has been upside with Jaden Ivey over his career and what he looked like before he went down with injury, I think at this point now we just got to come to the realization that Jaden Ivey, it may be a couple of years before he's back to what he is, and it's the mental part. The leg should have healed. Like, I've done heavy research on his injury. Like, it's not something and people compare it to Lonzo because they heard about the fragments in the knee. The problem wasn't just the fragments in the knee for Lonzo. The problem was that it was basically bone on bone, right? And then you had fragments on top of that. Then a bone bruise developed. Jaden Ivey doesn't have that. Like, you can't play with a bone bruise because it can turn into something even more major, which is why Lonzo was initially held out for so much longer than his initial timeline. You don't have that with Jaden Ivey. So, it seems like it's really just mental, and it's really just him trusting that leg again. But even with that said, you can only wait on that so long. Some players never really recover, or if they do mentally recover, it takes multiple years. So because it's that mental aspect of it, he can snap out of it this offseason with really attacking his rehab and going into training really hard, or it could be something that it takes a couple of years. So I want to hear from you guys on this in regards to it. With Jaden Ivey's situation as it stands right now, what do you think the Bulls should do with it? And I get it. And I'm not going to judge anybody that says, hey, we're done with Jaden Ivey. I'm not going to judge anybody that says, the potential's there. Let's take a look at it, whatever it is. But I want to hear from you guys. When you think about what to do with Jaden Ivey this offseason, what are your thought processes? And if you are somebody that says, hey, we should be open to re-signing him because if he can get back to that, what's the money number that you would put on that at this point in this offseason? Let me know that down below. But Billy Donovan provided updates for the other guys as well outside of Jaden Ivey. And it seems like as it stands right now on this road trip, it could be. Not that it's guaranteed, but it could be that Patrick Williams, Jalen Smith, and Anthony Simons all return back from injury over this stretch of time for the Chicago Bulls, which is good, right? Simons will be traveling, which is really good. Jaden Ivey will be staying behind, which we just talked about, but it seems like everybody else will be traveling with the team. So then it becomes about like, when do they make their return? And for what it's worth, Billy Donovan said this in regards to these guys returning to the court. What I think is going to end up happening is whenever these guys can get back and be healthy and whole to a certain extent, whenever the amount of games left, we'll have to evaluate it there. So the Bulls are still doing some evaluation, right? And we know that the Bulls record, they said it's 25-37 right now on the season. This is not a season like we're only 20 games left into the season. The Bulls have 20 games left this season, and it's just about making it through these 20 games and trying to evaluate the best that you can. I do think there's a chance that the Bulls look to try to bring back Simons or Sexton and Nick Richards, like depending on what happens at each situation with those guys. And that's really the determining factor in all this. And this is why in the NBA, I am glad that the draft comes first, right? Because what the Bulls do in the draft, if they get the Portland pick, if they get a quality big with the New Orleans second-round pick, where their pick ends up falling, depending on those things, that's going to determine what they do with some of these. And that's why when people ask things like, well, why did you trade for this guy? Why did you trade for that guy? It's giving themselves flexibility. We know that they need to address a big. There's no doubt about that. And I think the Bulls are fully prepared to go in on whether it's Mark Williams, whether it's Robert Williams, whether it's Walker Kessler. They're prepared to go after some form of veteran big and then turn around and also possibly draft a veteran big, especially if they get that Portland pick. Now, if they stay around 8, 9, 10, where they're slated right now, most of the people around there are either wings or guards, right? Nate Amit is the only wing that's slated to go there at 6'10", 207 pounds. He's probably going to go earlier, but if he's on the board there when the Bulls pick at either 8, 9, or 10, I do think they could possibly take him. That could be a long-term pairing with Matas Buzelis. But other than that, you're looking at a lot of guards. You're looking at a lot of guards when it comes down to it. Keaton Wagler, of course, is one that a lot of people are talking about. I can't wait to get in the draft bag. Braylon Mullins is another guy that could be going around there, 6'6", 196 pounds, another guy that they could take a look at there. Of course, you have Patrick Ngangba with Duke, but he's all the way slated down, go towards the end of that lottery. I don't know if they reach on that. Yaxel Lindenberg's another guy, but that could be looked at as a bit of a reach. I still think the Bulls need to go best player available rather than position necessarily with their pick. You have to nail a star, a player that you think can turn into a star, in my personal opinion. But to get back to that, I think that is in the evaluation. All that matters as going into that, and we'll see what they decide to do with it. They could decide to do nothing. We'll see, right? But to evaluate these guys, the Bulls are still looking to do that. And keep in mind, they haven't got a chance to evaluate a lot of these guys with Josh Giddey. Matas, yes, but not with Josh Giddey. I think that's part of it too. I know I've heard you guys. We don't want a backcourt that lacks defense. Listen, you're probably going to get a backcourt that lacks defense. I'm just going to be honest with you there. And whether it's Wagler, whether it's Simons, whether it's Giddey and Ivey, you're probably going to get that. Now, we'll see what happens and what the Bulls can do with it. But overall, like you only have what's available to you and what's ahead of you. And so we'll see what happens. But the Bulls are they're expecting these guys to come back sooner rather than later. But, for anybody holding out hope that we're going to get March Bulls again, you're probably not going to get March Bulls again. That's just my thought process on that. But again, we shall see. But as the Bulls get more healthier, I don't think that wins are coming with that. I think you're just looking to get healthier as a team overall. I'm not expecting a bunch of wins for this team in the remaining way. I've been very clear on it. For me, it's not about wins or losses anymore for me for this Bulls team. It's about, just looking at Matas, looking at Giddey, looking at some fit things, looking at play style things, And even then, you can only do so much evaluation at this point with how we're playing, the roster build, and all that type of stuff. So you're really looking at things other than that, right, at this point in the season. So we'll see. But I want to get into the last topic for today, right? And this is one that I really want to have a conversation about. I asked this question over on Locked On Bulls, and I want to present this to you guys here as well. How much time does Arturas Karnisovas have left? And I just want to go over it. So we're almost coming up on 6 years to the date that Arturas Karnisovas was hired as the president of basketball operations for the Chicago Bulls. He was hired April 13th, 2020. We're coming up on almost 6 years of that happening, which is crazy that much time has gone by, right? Now, in that time, including our record so far this season, the Chicago Bulls have only a 46% win percentage over that time. They have one playoff win, one playoff appearance as well, a bunch of play-in early exits also, and AK now has reset the roster 3 times. Now, I do think it's unfair to judge this current reset until after the draft and free agency, so this one is in progress. But when you look at it, he inherited a roster that he then moved a lot of those pieces, got back Nikola Vucevic, traded off first-round picks, and then furthered that in the offseason when he signed Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan. Did that in the offseason where he had no actual cap space. Built a team that was a playoff team, but it came crashing down after Lonzo Ball's injury. At that point in time, the Bulls were kind of treading water for 2, almost 3 years at that point, right? Then they finally reset again. Another major reset last season. Sitting off DeMar DeRozan in that offseason. Sitting off Zach LaVine at the trade deadline. Getting Josh Giddey in here, right? Prioritizing younger players like Matas Buzelis, Kobe White, those type of guys. And that was another reset. I do look at that as a reset. You reset that roster. You came into this season wanting to evaluate that and those guys. You then did another reset this year at the trade deadline where you cleared out Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, your prior draft picks and this is another thing. You basically said to yourself, my draft picks didn't work. You cleared out Jalen Smith, right? Not Jalen Smith, sorry. Julian Phillips. You cleared out Dalen Terry, one of your first round picks, right? Julian Phillips was a second round pick. You cleared out those guys, right? You sent those guys off along with Kobe White, along with Ayo Dosunmu. You sent those guys off. You waived Javon Carter, a guy that you gave a contract to, hoping he was going to be a starting caliber point guard. And you reset this roster again now. Now, like I said, this current reset, we're not going to judge yet because the goal of this reset isn't the players that we have right now. It's what we do with the flexibility, the draft picks, all those type of things, all the second-round picks that you stack that could be trade chips, all those type of things. But how much more time does Arturas Karnisovas realistically get? Now, my co-host over on Locked On Bulls, Pat the Designer, said that he has no faith that AK is going to be moved anytime soon. And I get that, right? I look at it and I said when AK was hired, 10 years. You're going to get 10 years, which means 2030, right? 2030 is when we're probably looking at before anything happens with this team. Now, what that does give you is 3 years to show a proof of concept in this current reset. It's important to get this reset right. What needs to go right in this reset for Arturas Karnisovas? One, you got to hit on your first round picks. That is the first and foremost thing. You have to hit on your first round picks. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Those first round picks have to hit. What do I mean by hit? I mean that those guys have to at least be competent starters in the NBA, and hopefully one of those guys turns into the star. But that is what you have to do. Too many picks have turned into nothing. Patrick Williams, Dalen Terry didn't really turn into much here for the Chicago Bulls, right? It just didn't happen. Now, we have Matas Buzelis is a solid starter. Noah Essengate still is to be determined, so you have that part, but you got to hit on your first-round picks. That is the first and foremost thing. If you want to turn this around, those first-round picks have to matter, and you have to start actually fitting pieces together that make sense long-term. That's the first thing. A, you have cap space. How you use that is hugely important because you can't just tread water anymore, right? And then I think the result base. Next season, I think this because of AK, the Bulls have to be better. And by that I mean they have to be actually, I know people aren't going to like to hear this, but the Bulls, because I don't think AK is going to have a multi-year tank, they have to be back to at least competing for a play-in. Now, I'm not going to call, that's AK's version of competitive. I view competitive as, do you have an actual chance to win a playoff series? But if next year, after resetting your roster and making your roster even younger, keep in mind, the Bulls minus Vooch were the second youngest team in the NBA. Now that's treaded a little bit, but the Bulls undoubtedly are going to be one of the youngest teams in the NBA next season. If you are competing for a play-in at that point in time with a complete young roster on the first year of a full reset, all right, cool, I'll give you that. But then after that, we have to start seeing that progress being made towards other things. Meaning that if next season, in the 26-27 season, you're competing for a play-in spot, in 27-28, I need you not just competing for a play-in, I need you to be competing for a top 6 seed. Now, if you fall out of that, and let's say we have times where we're actually competing for a top 6 seed, and then you end up a 17 and end up in the play-in. Okay, cool, but show progress. You have to progress. But by year 3 of this, at a minimum of this reset, which is the 28-29 season, you better damn well be a playoff seed with whoever your first round pick is. Josh Giddey, Matas Buzelis, Noah Estegate. 2 out of those 4 players need to be looking like players that could become all-stars at some point in time. That's what you need. And if that ends up happening, maybe AK stays around. Maybe then it's a proof of concept for AK at that point in time. I'm not saying that I'm betting on that. I'm not saying that I'm expecting AK to do that. I'm saying that is at the bare minimum. It can't be no more, oh, we got to 500. Fuck that getting to 500 shit. Getting to 500 should not be a fucking goal. It should be being above 500. Having a winning record should be the goal every single year, right? Now, I understand if you're not going to do that next season after having, you're going to have so much young players be the focus of your team, but by goddamn, we got to stop having such a low bar that we're just like 500. Oh, look, we're doing it. No, fuck that. If we are still, by AK's 10th year, still looking at this and saying, oh man, hey, we're right at, we got a chance at 500. Fuck that shit. I mean that very, very frankly, right? So that is what, and so rather, it really comes down to the only people that matter when it comes to firing AK and Eversley and Billy Donovan for that matter are the Reinsdorfs. And until the Reinsdorfs gives enough of a damn to hold the team to a standard, I can't blame anybody for thinking AK is going to be here into perpetuity. And we'll see. I don't think AK's job is nearly in jeopardy at all this offseason at all. It's not going to be. He's going to be here for a while. Everybody's like, we can't allow AK to draft another. He's going to do it. Like, I'm sorry, you don't have a say in that. The ones that do have a say are the Reinsdorf, and unfortunately, they don't give a shit. So we'll see what's going to happen there. But that's it for today. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear your thoughts down below, as always. This road trip, I would say that it's going to tell us a lot, but I don't think it's going to tell us shit. I think it's just going to be the Bulls going to try to get through it as best they can. We'll see what happens with the roster. We'll see what happens with the rebuild. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on everything down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell if you never want to miss an episode, especially as we're getting ready to go into the offseason. Draft content's coming, but offseason, those breaking news episodes are going to be coming at you guys fast, and we'll be dropping that as those happen as well. Make sure you guys follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.